Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
Oh, there's Brad. Well, not Brad, but at least the words there. And Mark is watching. Cool. And Penny's watching. All right. So we definitely have a quorum here, so we can probably pray. God, if there's enough people for praying, God probably will listen. I don't know. We'll see. Hannah doesn't look amused. I came on here, darn it, Jace. You better do something.
It wasn't her typical hi either. It was, I don't know, it wasn't quite like, hi. You know.
Oh, we didn't get our hand on. Hi.
There.
All right, well, Davin just shut off his camera as soon as you did that. He's like, I've had enough of Hannah. All right. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for this wonderful night this evening. We ask that you would be with us as we talk about your word and about the Bible and what you have to say for us today, and help us to think well, stretch our minds well, but also that this would be used for your glory, for your kingdom, for the work that we had to do, and not just for our own intellect. Right. All right, so let's do a little bit of a review for anybody who wasn't here, or for those who just need to review to remember things. So if you've got your notes, I kind of pushed everything up top that we did last week into very little lines real quickly. So if you guys can remind me what those are, and you can kind of do the review for me. Those of you on Facebook Live, if you want to go to that link on Zoom, you can do that and get the notes there. Actually, no, the notes are right there. Facebook. So what does it say? It says something like, what? I don't have the notes, so you have to help me. That means you have to unmute.
The story is told from where?
The story is told from where? Remind me, everyone, where is it told from? The Genesis 1
It's
story.
really exile.
Good job. Excellent. All right, so it's probably from Babylon, or from maybe after they're leaving, something like that. That's a key interpretive part of all of this. Remember that, please, because that helps us understand what's going on in this text. Okay? So it's from Babylon, which means we're talking about what millennium?
586 BCE.
Okay, so 586. Yeah, she didn't just give me a millennium. She gave me an exact year, so that was pretty good. I just wanted to say the first millennium BC would have been good enough. I'd have been proud of you, or a century would have been great. 6th century, awesome. Okay, but here we are in 586 BC. They're writing this. Now you're thinking Moses wrote this, of course. This is traditionally what we're told, that Moses wrote this. That would make it probably somewhere 1540-ish. If you hold to a traditional dating, maybe 1250 if you hold to a late date. But whatever, this has been redacted or edited during the Babylonian Empire, probably. Okay. And we call this source the P source, right? The priestly source. And you're going to see that the people who are priests, not necessarily priests themselves, but the priestly school, these followers of the priests at least, whoever's writing the scribes and stuff, they're going to be writing things and adding little pieces in here. Like, for instance, Genesis 2, 1 through 4, right? The whole 7th day is going to be added on. The first 6 days, probably not originally a P source, maybe an E source. Do you remember the P and the E and all that stuff? Does anybody have a clue what I'm talking about? Lori is nodding her head. All right, here's all you need to know. Okay, we don't want to get into all the weeds of all of that, but there are different authors that have taken the text and they've kind of combined them together, taken a few different texts, brought them together, and then they've added their own stuff here and there to help things out, to tell a new story. It's kind of what preachers do, right? We take the text and then we tell a new story for a new group of people. We say, hey, these creation wars, these things that are happening in there, they don't really apply to us because we don't know all these crazy gods that are fighting back and forth. So how does it work for us in our new situation? So this text you have is in a Babylonian situation. Hey, we're in the exile. Hey, life sucks. Why? What happened here? What was all this? Okay, so that's the context it's coming out. So this is like hermeneutical principle number 1, right? Figure out when this is written, why it's being written. That's very helpful. All right. Nice to see you, Don. And Jennifer said nope. Well, that was rude. All right. I don't know what she was saying nope to, but probably something brilliant that I said, and she's refusing my brilliance. Okay.
People on Facebook that want to find the notes, they have to go to the page, not your personal page. Tuesday School, FYI.
Oh, yes. You have to go to Tuesday School. Exactly. Those of you watching this. Denise, Jennifer, Penny, Darlena, go to Tuesday School on here, not my particular page.
And that's where the notes are.
Type that into the little, there's a magnifying glass, I think, search, and type in Tuesday School, and you'll see it there. All right. So we got Jeremy and Karen and Don now. Nice to see all of you. Actually, I don't see Karen or Jeremy, but that's okay. All right. So that's the first big, huge thing. What else do we have in the notes there for a review? Hi, Ellie. What's next after that?
Why must they worship God?
Why must they worship God, right? This Elohim. So why must they? Because he is Redeemer and Creator. We talked about that last time, right? And we said that creation and redemption are kind of the same thing. So when you create and then you uncreate and then you recreate, you're redeeming, you're saving them out of this chaos, this uncreation. And that's what's going on in Genesis. Okay, they're pulling them out of this uncreation, this tohu vabohu, which we're about to get into. All right. So this is all review. If you're coming on here and you have no idea what's happening, it's because we talked about all this last week. Okay, so what's next on the notes? Kyle, don't tell me to behave. I never behave. You know that.
The Old Testament is Israel's story written in light of national trauma.
Excellent. The Old Testament is Israel's story, right? This is key. It's not your story. And it's written in light of national trauma, which is the exile. Okay, which we've already said. Keep going.
To encourage continued faith to God, worship to God, blank to God. It says blank.
Faithfulness.
Continued faithfulness. That's it. Yep. Okay. So what's the next line? Gotta get through this review a little quicker.
But isn't it about ex nihilo? Creation.
Okay. All right. We talked about creation ex nihilo, right? That is creation out of nothing. We said that's probably not what's going on in Genesis, especially according to Genesis 1 verse 2, which says, what does Genesis 1 verse 2 say?
That there's water.
That's water. Lots of water, right? And I described it as kind of like when you're surfing, remember that? And you fall and the water and the sand is all hitting you in the face and you're upside down and you don't know which way's up. And that's kind of this tohu vabohu, this chaos, this wilderness period. This you can't live there. It's uninhabited. And so God starts moving, right? He starts ripping the waters apart in two different ways, right? Sarah Brody loves it when I do this. This is her big thing. Sarah, right? So he's doing that. And therefore he can put his representative, his image, his likeness, his icon. Remember we talked about that at the very end, right before we left, in the middle. Okay, so keep going on the notes so we can get to the cool stuff about icon in a minute.
Is it really about the beginning? What do tohu and bohu mean?
Okay, so tohu vabohu means what?
Chaos.
All right, chaos is a good big
Blackness,
picture.
darkness, nothingness.
Formless
Habited and
Blackness,
uninhabitable.
nothingness. All right, excellent. I like hearing Jennifer's voice, even though I can't see her. I know that that's her voice. Yeah. So uninhabited and uninhabitable, I think is what I said last time, right? You're in this place that you can't survive because the water's everywhere. Okay. And is this really the beginning? Well, it's the beginning of something, right? In the beginning, but that's what we're trying to figure out. What is it the beginning of? Is it a creation of the world? Or is there something else going on? And I'm arguing that while this may have originally been a creation of the world story, it's now been redacted, edited, in order to make it a different kind of story that the priests want to tell you. They have a different reasons for going in there and manipulating the story a little bit, creating in that cool little frame. You remember the frame last time?
It says recording.
Right? Remember this? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And each of these things,
Recording.
these are all inhabited in these days. Do you remember that? So we call that a framework theory or hypothesis, the framework.
You may need a darker marker.
Darn. Okay. Is that any darker?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So these
I
are
still can't see it.
different days, and then of course day 7, which is going to be added on in order to make it priestly. Priestly. Okay, so this is the way the story is structured. So it's not structured to give you a 7-day creation, like to tell you that it was 24-hour days. So Genesis isn't written. Okay, it's in the notes. I got to wait till we get there. All right, keep going in the notes. Hi, Caden. That's my other boy. Nice to see you. Keep going in the notes. What's it say next?
The chaos is about cleaning off the table. The author's picking a fight. I don't like sun, moon, god, Marduk, or Tiamat.
All right, you went down pretty far there. Okay, so right, this is like cleaning off the table so that God can do his work. That's what's happening here. I said it's kind of like a house. It's not building a house. It's organizing the house. The house is already built. You move in and you have to start moving boxes. You got to put the beds up so you can sleep. You can't rest. You can't do what you have to do until the work is done in the house. Then things get peaceful, right? Restful. You've got the picture frames. They're all hung now. All of your pictures hung. You can be like, yes, I can press the Netflix button and it turns on. I can now relax. Okay, that's what we're waiting for. That's what God is doing. He's organizing the chaos. He's ripping it apart. And then I would talk about the different gods or the different things that they don't like, right? I don't like the Tiamat god. I don't like the sun moon god. See, what's happening is there's this literary war going on. The author is fighting against other stories that you don't know, perhaps, but they knew. They knew that Tiamat was a god that was defeated. They knew that Yam was the sea god. They knew Leviathan. They knew this seven-headed coiled serpent that goes through the water and that God is doing battle with them. They got this. So there's little digs throughout Genesis 1 against these gods, these authors. So God is not, or the author of Genesis is not arguing against evolution, for instance, saying, hey, God is the creator, not evolution. Because there is no such thing as evolution, right? Nobody thought about evolution. He's arguing about what? Why is he writing this? To tell them that this God is the ultimate God, not all these other gods that they know. See, there's no argument about whether it's science or God. It is God. Everybody in their world agrees it's God. Nobody's arguing anything else. So you can't use Genesis 1 to defeat people's views of evolution, nor should you, because evolution's fine. Doesn't bother this text at all. Okay? So let scientists argue about that. That's not our job. That's all I would say. And they may come up with better ideas and stuff like that in the future. That's fine, but it's not our problem. Okay, we're just trying to wrestle with this particular text. Okay, so all these different gods that they're fighting, Tiamat, etc., sun and moon god. Remember, it's the brighter and lesser lights, not the main one, not the Ra or Khonshu or the different gods like that. So then we finally made it to verse 26. Okay, so here we are. We're in verse 26 now. Yes, 2 weeks to get through, or 3 weeks probably to get through chapter 1. But remember, these stories are written to introduce all of Torah. Torah is written to introduce all of the rest. That's probably a bad way of saying it. All the rest is commentary on these things. So you could literally spend years in Genesis 1 through 11 because everything that is done after that is to connect back here. So people are going to constantly talk about creation. So I could just say, hey, you know the ripping of the water story? It's going to happen again. Where's it going to happen again? Oh, I don't know. How about Exodus chapter 14 and 15, right? Ripping the water. Oh, how about Joshua going across the Jordan River? It's going to, once again, be ripped open. Oh, how about baptismal waters that Paul talked about? Somebody's got to mute him. Good job, Travis. Thanks. That's pretty awesome, though. All right. Oh, am I hacked? Is that what that means? Oh, so all these other people are not.
Fucking nigga.
Yeah, looks like we might have some unwanted visitors. We might have to improve our password protection.
Ah, okay. I don't know what's happening, people on Facebook. It's probably all your fault.
Turn the waiting room on, Travis. That'll
Ah,
stop. Then you'll see, you can look in the waiting room. But if you turn the waiting room on, I'm trying to think how you do that, or you'll figure it out. That'll stop that.
right.
And you can kick out all those people that are.
Yeah, I know how to do that.
If you're watching on Facebook, Zoom is getting hacked right now, just FYI.
I have done so many Zoom meetings over the last year, and I've never had this happen.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
All right.
I was on one
There we
and it got hacked. It was awful. It was like a porn movie.
We're good now.
It was awful.
All right. So Travis has controlled it somehow. All those people that I don't recognize that keep popping on here. Wow. There's no way to get rid of them, I guess, Travis?
I was kicking them out as they came in, but now they're all going into the waiting room. So
Okay.
It looks like there's still a few of them on there.
All right.
Are there magazines in the waiting room?
Comes impossible, then we'll figure something else out. All right, so look, we're in chapter 1, verse 26, or at least some of us are. So I'm going to read that. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So we kind of stopped with that at the end. We talked about let us, and there was some kind of little bit of a conversation about what that means when God speaks in the plural, the majesty plural, that, you know, that idea, like, we are not amused when the queen says that. Maybe that's what's going on there. Or what I said was, this is probably the council motif. And I gave you 3 verses in your new notes. I just looked them up real quick. One is Psalm 80 something.
82:1. 82:1.
Psalm 82:1. If anybody wants to look at that. If anybody gets it, they can read it faster than me. That's fine. Psalm 82:1 says, God presides in the great assembly. He gives judgment among the Elohim. Okay, and the rest of the chapter is about the same thing. Verse 6 says, I said, you are Elohim, you are all sons of Elyon, but you will die like mere men. It's quoted in the New Testament too. So there it is, this great assembly idea. And then I think I put one in 1 Kings with Micaiah.
22:19.
Okay, 1 Kings 22:19. Here, we'll just do it real quick. Oh, 1 Kings is the other direction. 1 Kings 22:19. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne with all the host of heaven standing around him on his right and on his left. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab into attacking Ramoth Gilead and going to his death there? One suggested this, and another that. Finally, a spirit came forward, stood before the Lord, and said, I will entice him. By what means? The Lord asked. I'll go out and be a lying spirit in the mouths of all his prophets, he said. You will succeed in enticing him, said the Lord. Go and do it. So the Lord put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets of yours. The Lord decreed disaster for you, etc. So again, so Micaiah is a prophet on earth who is invited into the divine council. Okay, which happens, some would say Isaiah chapter 6 is the same kind of story, or chapter 7, well, 6 and 7, right? Where Isaiah is called into the council room of God, and they say, who will go? And he says, I will go. Right, remember all that? And they take the coal and put it on his lips, etc. And then Job chapter 1 and 2, especially, where the Satan figure there, which is not the Satan that you think of, the devil, just means the accuser, Satan, enters into this divine council as well. He seems to have access to heaven. So this is just a motif that's used throughout all ancient literature. So that's why people assume that's what's going on here as well. And I think they're right. And there's tons of different stuff written on it. Read the Divine Council and the Cosmic Mountain motif by Haverson. But anyway, all right. So that's that. We kind of talked about that, the let us part. But the image part is what we ended on, and it's super important to grasp. Okay, so this image, this icon word, and selim, likeness, these are kind of the same word. They're not exactly, but we won't get into the weeds here. But the point of this is that God has now done something, right? He's created something that is like him in some way. Okay? And we said, this is what kings do. They leave an icon, an image in a place when they leave. So they come in, they conquer, and then they leave this image there, and then they leave. And now we've got this image. So everybody remembers that's the great king, the Caesar. He's the guy that we remember. So it's a statue usually. So basically God is creating a statue of himself, and he's sticking it in the garden. Okay, this cosmic place where God and man connect. He's placed man there while he's also in heaven, and these two realms are meeting together. In the middle, we call this Eden. That's where these two realms, heaven and earth, are meeting together. Okay, and so God comes in and out of these realms, man comes in and out of these realms, and they meet together. And other times they're separated, and the man is the image. He's the main guy. Does that make sense? So everybody else in the world is supposed to look to this image and remember the great king. That's what we mean when we say image and likeness. He is the representative of God. So he's supposed to do what God does. Now, this is hugely important because it's possible that a lot of this story takes place during the Egyptian exile, okay, which is 1,000 years earlier. Does that make sense? That is, the author of this, remember, it's redacted. It's edited over many centuries. The Bible is not stable during this time. That might make you really uncomfortable, but it's just the way things are. There was no such thing as an original text. So we talk a lot about, well, the autographa, which means the original writing, was inerrant or inspired, but there is no such thing as that, right? There is no original writing. This writing was there in pieces, in little stories that people pulled together, and then they added their commentaries, and then 100 years later, other people are adding notes, and those notes got pushed in here too, and then 100 years later, other people wrote notes. What we're saying is during the Babylonian exile, it was probably finished or pulled all together in this final form that you see, something like what you see now. Okay, so it's a flexible text, which I'm guessing is really scary, but it's the way things work. Okay, it shouldn't take away from it, actually. It makes it more beautiful. So now it's stable, but then it was very flexible. So originally, this story probably took place during the Egyptian exile. So they're in Egypt at this time, right? Remember the slaves in Egypt, Pharaoh, the whole Exodus story. And maybe he's trying to say, hey, you guys are trapped in this kingdom, and you think that the great king is the son of God. Because remember, that's the way they think, right? The sons of the gods are kings. You know this, Nero, the emperors, Julius Caesar, all the Caesars and stuff like that. They consider themselves sons of God. Okay, that was true for Pharaoh too. Pharaoh was son of Ra, right? The sun god. So he was the exact representation of God, the image of God. But everybody else was just commoners. They're just regular people. So you don't want to mess with the king because he's the image of God. So this text is saying, no. You're missing the point. Mankind is the image of God, right? Not just the kings, but you're all kings and queens, ladies. Okay, you're all royal. You're all the people that are supposed to represent God. So God has taken aside this group of people, or this particular person, Adam, right? Mankind, which we don't know anything about Adam yet, but he's taking him aside and he's saying, you will represent me to everything else. In this case, just animals, right? Except for this story isn't about, I think, the creation of just one or two people. It's the story of one or two people being elected or pulled out from a group and made to represent him to the rest of the world. Okay, so this might blow your mind a little bit too, but just think about the next few chapters, right? Cain is going to kill his brother. He's going to leave, and he's going to be afraid, right? What does Cain say? I'm afraid now that I've killed my brother that other people are going to try and kill me. And hopefully your appropriate response would be, who are all these other people? There's only you. It's like you and your dad and mom. Like maybe there was one more, Seth, maybe a few other brothers and sisters, but there's not, but he goes to he builds another city, right? With other people. There's people spread out all over the world. Okay. So it's not that story. It's not the story that you keep thinking that it is because that's how you've grown up thinking it is. Okay? It may have had something to do with that in the beginning, but it's been morphed over the generations to be a much larger story, a story of Israel as the image of God, the likeness of God. Now, Paul is going to do a lot with this image stuff, right? Later on. But even when you read Paul, I want you to stop thinking about, the image of God in that you have like arms and legs like God does, or you have a smile, or you have a brain, because he doesn't have any of those things, right? Yes. Remember, anytime we speak about God, we speak in metaphor, right? So he doesn't have strong right arm. He doesn't have eyes that see throughout all the earth. He doesn't have chicken wings that he puts over his baby chicks.
So when you say we're like a statue, you don't mean an actual physical statue. It's
right.
Like
Not a statue.
like a great rock and roll song.
Which one is that?
No, I just said metaphors like the poets, like a great rock and roll song.
That's right. That's exactly what this. And remember, this is a poem, right? So this may have been sung. Evening and morning, the first day. I don't know. Some of you might be able to do a little better than me, but right. So I would guess they probably would have turned this into some, maybe not rock and roll because they're not as cool, but it would have been good. And that's the point of this. You're not a statue. You're a representation for God. Every time someone looks at you, you're supposed to picture God. So N.T. Wright says that we have mirrors that we're holding up, the glory of God, right? The glory comes down and we shine out the light to somebody else so that they see God. They don't see you. That's the point. Everything you do is directing, like, oh, focus here. Okay, so there's a lot of application points here, right? It doesn't mean every time somebody says thank you that you have to say, well, that's just God. And like, don't be that person that never accepts a compliment or anything. But that's what you should be thinking, right? And sometimes you do need to refocus their attention on that. Okay, so it's your character. It's who you are as a person. That's the most significant thing here in this representing him. So like, no, we won't go there. Yeah. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions at this point? So this verse 26 is very important to the whole rest of the Old Testament and then to the whole rest of the Bible. Everybody's going to bounce off of this. And verse 28 is also really important. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Okay, so this is what we call, well, do you know what this is called? This has a theological name, this verse.
Outline says cultural mandate.
That's it. Cultural mandate. Is that in the notes? Is that what you said? Yeah. All right. So this is the cultural mandate. So this is, we call it a mandate, but I think I have in there something like, is this a command or is this a blessing? Do I have that there? I was thinking it in my head anyway. Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. So is it a command or is it a blessing? What do you think? Be fruitful and multiply. And subdue the earth. If you speak, you have to actually unmute.
Yes.
All right, that's a good answer. So you say yes, both.
Yeah.
It's a command and a blessing. And I think that's probably true. It's not
I feel like
quite,
it's a trick question, so I'm going to choose yes.
yeah, smart. Yeah, it's almost like you've listened to me before. Yeah. So, yeah, this is it's not quite to the level of a command, but also not just merely a blessing.
Sorry, that's my household thing. My study Bible, because I have no original thoughts, say that this is a divine benediction.
That's good. So a blessing, right? Benediction just means blessing.
Yeah.
So, and it is, it's be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Like this is what you get to do, not what you have to do. And this is the representative role, isn't it? Right? It's not go be a representative. It's look what you get to do. You get to represent the sovereign of the universe. You have that special role. So when you think about like predestination, you know, all those battles between those reformed people and those not reformed people's predestination, right? You've been elected. It's not you get elected. It's look at what you get. You get this privilege to represent God in the world, to be the aroma of Christ, to set up little houses of God everywhere that you go, right? So when you're going into Dollar General or, I don't know, everybody's in different places of the country, so I can't think of different places. If you go to any restaurant, you know, Chick-fil-A, well, no, Chick-fil-A, because that's God's place anyway. Like
That's a Dollar General everywhere. That's a good analogy.
Okay. All right. So
good
you're
thing.
setting up a little house of God in that place so that everybody can see God in you. That's the idea. All right. And that doesn't mean you have to dress modestly. That's not what's happening here, although you probably should dress modestly, I guess. I don't know. By the way, when Paul speaks of dressing modestly, what does he mean? Anybody? It
Keep
does not
warm.
mean don't wear, you know, low-cut blouses or high skirts. That's not what it's talking about. Modesty means watch your jewelry.
Oh.
You rich ladies that are showing off everything. So if you come in with your collar up to here and long dress, and then you have like big, huge pearls and braided hair and all this other stuff, that's what he's talking about there.
That does not include shoes, correct? Shoes are fair game.
Shoes, you can pretty much do whatever you
Anything.
want.
Okay, good.
My-
Just so we're good.
Shoes are open.
And purses, yes. Okay.
Understanding
Shoes,
the
purses
key.
are good. Okay.
That's fair. Yeah.
Is it only jewelry up to a certain dollar amount? Or
We'll do that in another class. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
give you all the rankings for what you can and can't get away with.
What about like on your toes? Like I thought he was going to say like up to a certain point on your body.
Oh,
Like-
yeah. You can wear an anklet. That's allowed. And toe rings are allowed. but
Okay.
Not necklaces.
So toe rings with the sandals, Jen.
All right. So back to this, right? Represent God in your life. That's what's going on here. Okay. So in the image of God, you're created, male and female, he created them. I forgot to mention this at least very quickly, right? In verse 27. Male and female, he created them. But as we're going to find out, there's another creation story that doesn't say he created them male and female, does it? It's going to say he created them how?
From
Male.
the rib. Oh,
That's right.
Yeah, male first and then the female.
Right. Female is going to be ripped. It's not really a rib, which we'll get to when we get there. It just means the side, like Adam got ripped in two, is kind of the idea there. Okay. So God created him in his image. In the image of God, he created the male and female. He created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth, and subdue it. What's the job of this human? To represent God by having dominion over the world. So you are kings. You are supposed to subdue the world. What do you subdue the world with? The Spirit of God, the Word of God. Okay, so I think I have in there somewhere, is this cultural mandate outdated or is it updated with the gospel? What happens when the gospel comes on the scene? Do we still follow the cultural mandate? Are you still required to have lots of kids? If anybody here doesn't have kids, that you're in trouble? No, because it was a blessing, right? Not really a command so much, but how does the gospel update this?
Well, you've got the make disciples of all nations version of multiplying.
Okay, excellent. So Matthew 28, right? Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That whole thing. Go 2 by 2, go into the world. So this is our new cultural mandate, right? The Great Commission. It's really the old cultural mandate, just updated. It's saying the gospel does update it. It says no longer are you just creating little images, little icons, little image bearers, right, of yourself, but you're creating image bearers of yourself out there, like right here, while we're all talking together, we're creating image bearers. Okay, we're discipling people, we're baptizing them, we're showing them who Jesus is. So even that comment goes back to Genesis chapter 1. Okay, so what we've done is we've shown that there's this battle going on in the literature for them to try to understand that it's not about these other ancient gods or these kings. It's about this God and you as kings, or Israel as kings. Israel as a king, specifically. So it's a literary battle. They're not arguing against, there's no primitive things like, oh, you primitive people who believe in evolution or something like that, right? That's not what's going on here. They share the same basic understanding of the universe. So it would say something like this. Genesis 1 is mocking the Babylonians. That's what's going on here. This is a mocking text. It would say something like this. Your stories say there are many gods who work together, or at least needed to create, and they create man as a slave, and they're to be worshipped as in control of their domains, sky, water, air, land, fire, etc. But the reality is that it's about chaos being ordered, and Yahweh, or Elohim, doing this on his own, not with any help. He's the master of it all. It's about other gods being mocked and mankind being exalted. Psalm 8. Remember that? Psalm 8, right? The gods and all that. Okay, anyway. It's saying you may think we are weak because we are captive in a foreign land, but the reality is our God could take out your gods with but a whisper. We're here for a reason. Okay, but it's not because our God is impotent. Okay, he can do anything.
Could this also have been the Egyptian gods as opposed to the Babylonian gods, from what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, and it probably right? So it probably started off with Egyptian gods and went to Assyrian gods and Babylon. Like they would have reinterpreted it in each time. But remember, it doesn't look like this in those earlier. We don't know what it looked like in the earlier phase. We only know what it looks like its final copy that we have now. So this one is to mock the Babylonian gods. And you're going to see that a lot. I mean, even Babel, right, is going to show up in just a few chapters. Babel is Babylon, just in case anybody didn't catch that earlier or knew that. This is Babylon. It's the creation of Babylon, the great city. And God is going to destroy it, right? He's going to do something terrible to it. So we have this fight, this literary fight that's going on, and creation being undone. Right? He's going to redo everything. He's fighting and he's undoing it, and then he's making it back. He's redeeming it. He's making it better, and then he's bringing out particular people to do that. All right. So what's my next thing on my notes?
You kind of touched on them a minute ago. Like, is it a real battle and then creation / uncreation? I think that's what you were just kind of talking
Yeah,
about.
that's kind of what I was doing. But did I skip anything else? 'Cause I feel like there was something else really big in there somewhere.
Primitive thinking. We
No, I
talked
did
about.
Okay.
The story is about the creation of what?
Okay, yes. Let's talk about that real quick. Or maybe not real quick. What is actually being created here? Right? We know it's the world.
A place where God and man can meet.
Right. Okay, so we've created this place that mankind can now dwell with God. What is that place throughout all of the rest of the Bible?
In the Holy of Holies.
Right.
Temple.
The temple, the Holy of Holies, exactly. Okay, so Eden, now keep in mind, we haven't talked about Eden yet, right? So we're going to get to that next week, like, because now the Adam and Eve story is going to start, and you're going to see all the cool little details. But just to preface it, right? Eden is this place, and then inside of Eden, there's this garden, right? And the garden water flows out from this garden. All of these are going to be temple. It's a temple language. Okay, it's the place that Adam and Eve are going to talk and walk with God. It's the place that is going to be, well, we'll talk about the sevens next week and stuff. But right at the end of chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2, you have that seventh day added, that Sabbath day. Right? This is a rest day now. So why is God talking about rest? Does God need rest?
Maybe.
Maybe. That's a fair question. Maybe he does. Maybe our understanding of God as never needing any rest might be wrong. Because right here it says he needs rest, or at least he took rest.
Is it the priestly authors putting it back on to the creation story?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, they have a Sabbath, so they put it back onto the creation story.
Right. So they're giving what they are currently doing, they're giving it a history.
Yeah.
Right. So they're saying, here's where it began. Now, we could argue whether it began then or not, whether this is just a literary thing going on or whether that really was this way. That's a question I don't really know the answer for that. Okay. But the fact is that they have a rest day like a ton of cultures do. And they're saying the reason that they have this rest day is because there are 6 days of creation and God needed to rest next. All right. So this looks like what we call, it's analogical to a work week. They worked 6 days. We work 5 days and then take 2 days of rest, but they work 6 days and then a day of rest. So it's an analogy to their work week, and they're putting that back on God. By the way, they're going to change the reason for why we have 7 days later on. So here in Genesis, it's because God created the world, right? But in Deuteronomy, why is it? We should get all that later, I guess, maybe. Not because God created the world, it's because he rescued them from Egypt. Okay? That's the reason that we rest now. That's the reason that we do all these things, because he rescued. So the story is going to change a little bit as to why we have a Sabbath day. And even what we're supposed to do on the Sabbath day is going to alter a little bit as time goes by, which makes our arguments now in today's world, like, what do we do on the Sabbath, right? This is a pretty important question. Some of us are what we call Sabbatarians. A Sabbatarian is somebody who really doesn't do anything except for maybe go to church. The rest of the day is done with either good deeds or Bible studies, things like that. Okay, it's a way to say we don't have to, and I think this is very legit. So let's apply this just for a moment here. Okay, there's a reason that we take a day off, a day of rest. Brueggemann says it's to tell the world that we are not the ones who we aren't dependent, we aren't independent. Okay, it's a moment of trust where we say, even though we haven't gotten everything done, we're going to trust that God will take care of things. So we can rest. We can just relax and let God do that. So those of you who think, oh, I've got to get my homework done on Sunday because I didn't have time, you're missing the point, right? Or you take your work home and you do it on Sunday, you're missing the point. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do those things. That's going to be up to your own individual consciences as to whether this continues to apply. But that was the application. And it's a good one. I mean, it tells the world something I think that's really important, right? That we are depending on God, that even our work week, even the 6 days of work that we do is dependent on God. Everything, the fact that we're taking care of it all is because of God. And the seventh day kind of makes that very clear. So in our family, we've tried to minimize any working, but we haven't been real strict about it. So,
Well, and haven't there always been arguments about what is allowed and not allowed on Sabbath? I mean, that's gone back to the beginning. Yeah.
The rabbis even argued about that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the Pharisees, they couldn't walk a certain amount of steps and do things like that. And then, of course, they'd fudge these things so they could do more and more. They would, you can't walk more than 100 steps away from your house or 1,000 steps or whatever theirs was. I don't know what it was. And so what you do is you end up putting things that are yours in other people's houses so that could be your house as well. So you could walk 1,000 steps to that person's house, and then you could walk 1,000 steps to the next house. You basically put a toothbrush in everybody's house. I'm making this up, but you get the idea, right? So that they could so they could actually make a whole journey on those days.
Loopholes.
Right, finding the loopholes, exactly. That's what's
Then
happening.
Jesus went and healed on the Sabbath and messed everything up.
That's right. And they were ticked at him, right? Yep. They don't like that at all. You don't do those kinds of things. He's like,
And he said, you're missing the point.
you're missing the point. Yes. And
So
especially,
I have a question.
Okay.
So I love to parallel the Old Testament with the New Testament, and all this talk about the Sabbath. I always think about Romans 14, verse 6. He who regards one day as special does so to the Lord, and he who eats meat eats the Lord. Okay, blah blah blah. So basically, it goes on and on and on. So okay, one man considers one day more sacred than another. Another man considers every day alike, and each one should be fully convinced of his own mind. So is there at any point that we're going to talk about how the Old Testament parallels with the New? Because that's what I like to constantly do.
AC, he's an Old Testament scholar. He didn't learn about the New Testament. He just only knows about the Old Testament.
all I know is that Paul
Right.
and Jesus are
Who's
there.
talking to me?
Yeah.
I was like, who is that?
Well, I think we actually have
Nobody-
talked about the New
okay.
Testament a lot today, but we didn't talk about this particular thing.
You're not on mute.
And
Okay.
I don't have a clue what Paul is doing in Romans.
Oh, you're on Zoom.
Really don't. Like I'm actually reading Romans right now in my devotional time, and I'm still clueless as to what's happening here. And I think that the reason I'm clueless is I think most of my life I've thought it meant one thing. And my theology has changed enough now that as I read Romans, I see something very different. And so I don't know where I am in this, but this particular text, I mean, sure. I think we're talking about, it's obviously a Gentile versus Jew conversation, like all of Paul's letters are.
Mhm.
If you're getting something else out of Paul's letters than that there's one unified church, then you're not reading it correctly. That's what he's doing in all of his letters, is unifying the Gentiles and the Jews.
Right.
Okay? So they have different views as to what Gentiles would be allowed to come in doing what kind of things. Like, oh, you have to get circumcised. Oh, you have to eat kosher laws. Read Acts chapter 15, right, to find the compromise, right? Because some of them are saying, no, they don't have to do this. Some are saying, yes, they do. And they come up with a compromise that Paul hates. So Acts says one thing, and then Paul constantly says, yeah, Acts is wrong. Okay. Like that compromise document that we signed. Yeah. It was just to get people off our back basically, but it's not what we should be doing. Okay. So it's really fascinating. So here it is.
The original reformer.
What?
Paul was the original reformer.
I missed it, Travis.
I said Paul was the original.
Paul was the original reformer. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So each one should be convinced in his own mind as to what you're supposed to be doing. So some of you have heard me speak about the law before, and I'm not sure I want to bring this up in any kind of detail 5 minutes before we end, but I'm not sure that the law applies at all. Hebrews, the author of Hebrews would definitely agree with me. The author of Matthew would say it's been fulfilled, right? But not abolished, even though Hebrews says it has been abolished. What do you do with the law? And I think this is what Paul's trying to figure out. I think he's trying to like, okay, should we take the Sabbath or not take the Sabbath? Should we eat these meats or not eat these meats? In order to get into the covenant community, what should we be doing? And he would say, well, you're already in the covenant community, Israel, but Gentiles are coming in. How do they get in? And he's going to argue it's through the Spirit, through the Ruach, the breath of God, right? It's not through keeping of the law. So if you want to keep the law and do some of those things, those rituals and things like that, I'm not going to be, generally, he's not going to be too upset with you. Although sometimes he's going to say you're adding something to the gospel, and that's a problem. So remember, the New Testament is trying to figure out what to do with the Old Testament after meeting Jesus. That's what's happening. So Paul is working out his theology as well, right in front of us.
Well, I think we all are kind of authors in a certain way as we gain perspectives, and everybody who's ever written a book about their understanding and revelation from Jesus is, it's like, oh, there's another chapter.
Right.
A million years from now, and who knows? Your
Right.
word will be gold, Jace.
Well, mine will definitely be all wrong, but at least I'll have made people think about what's going on here. That's really the bigger thing. And everything pointing back to Jesus. Like, that's what Paul is doing, right? He's working all this out, but his main thing is look at Jesus. That's the key. Okay, keep looking here. Gentiles, Jews, we're all together in this, right? This is the Ephesians 3, 10, 11, right? Through the church, God's manifold wisdom is made known to the heavenlies. Okay, all of you who have listened to any of my sermons have heard that line many, many times. This mission 3:10 idea, Ephesians 3:10. So, yeah, I think if you eat meat and you give thanks to God for it, if you abstain, give thanks to God. If you celebrate the Sabbath and give thanks to God, it's all good. Okay, other questions? I want to start with chapter 2, verse 5 when we get back into this, but.
So who wrote Hebrews?
Great question.
You said the author of Hebrews. I always thought it was Paul, but then I just read in my Google just told me that it could be Saint Barnabas. But so I'm like, wow, I thought Paul wrote Hebrews. But
yeah, I would say it's almost definitely not Paul, but okay. The Eastern Orthodox Church believes it is Paul.
Okay.
So that's a pretty large portion of Christianity. But the language, the way that it's written, doesn't sound like Paul. But to be honest, there's a couple of Pauline epistles that don't sound a lot like Paul either. So
Kyle doesn't think it's Paul either.
Paul doesn't think it's Paul? Well, then.
No, Kyle.
Oh, Kyle. Oh, hi, Kyle. I didn't even see you. Well, if Kyle said it's not Paul, then that's, I mean, really, that's the end of this conversation.
So, I mean, what was the Greek prowess, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different, and it just, I mean, read Hebrews. It flows very differently. It doesn't sound anything like the way he speaks.
So maybe it was Paul with this Pepsi or a migraine or something like that. So
that could be all it is, yes.
That was the thorn in his flesh.
Right.
My non-Bible, as you guys refer to it as, says that the author is uncertain.
I think that's what I was trying to say. Yep.
See?
So we all just say the author of Hebrews. It's easy. It could have been Apollos, Barnabas, Paul. Could have been lots of other people. All right.
Who cares?
So, yeah, that's a great answer. Yep. Although remember, finding out who wrote it and when he wrote it is really important to understanding what it's saying. So in this case, we don't know, so we're going to be missing some things, but we don't know Genesis either, right? We don't know who wrote it and exactly when.
My Bible says it was probably written in the late AD 60s.
Okay. Hebrews?
Or CE, or however you want to word it.
Right. Common era, yes. So, okay. All right,
You-
so the ending of chapter 1 is God saw all that he had made and it was very good, right? So it's very good, exceedingly good. So tov me'od, okay, which is an extra step in this. Evening and morning, sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth, or the sky and the land, were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested. Okay, so that word Shavah sounds very much like Shavat sounds very much like Shavah, 7 and rest. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it he rested from all the work of creating he had done. All right, so that's the reason it was blessed, at least in Genesis. In Deuteronomy, it's blessed for a different reason, because he redeemed them from Egypt. So now we have a heavens and earth created, or the land, the place where God dwells and the place where man dwells are now created, and they're at least largely together. Okay. What we're going to wait for now, though, is for this starting to drift apart thing. Okay. Something's going to happen to the cosmos that's going to make it start to drift, and we're going to need to create some representation where God can come and dwell with his people. Okay, because they're not allowed to get back into Eden. We don't know the story yet. This is all, we just pretend we don't know that, right? When we're reading Genesis 1. But you do know it. So this seventh thing is this priestly idea that they're going to have 7 days, this ritualistic 7 days. So God has created a temple. He's placed his image, his priest, in it to be able to live, to represent him well in the world. And now it's exceedingly good. Good, tov. It's utility, right? It does what it's supposed to do. That's what tov generally means. It's a good thing. Later on, remember in Exodus, who's going to be called tov?
Moses.
Good. So Moses is tov. But that's what's amazing is remember that the princess finds him and she realizes that, or no, sorry. When he's born, the mother hides him because he is tov, right? And people have been translating that in all kinds of weird ways. The Septuagint, I think, translates it with the word aseas. Who's my Greek guy? Kyle knows some Greek. Is that the word? It's for handsome? Yeah, you don't remember.
I don't know.
I think it's asteas for handsome. Okay, but it's good. Tov. That is, he is a new creation of God. He's a new creation. This is what's happening. But who's going to be our final new creation? Well, not our final. Who's going to in the New Testament? Stacy, you don't have to answer the question, but New Testament.
Jesus.
I see people it's a Sunday school answer, right? So when they talk about him being the new creation, you're like, wait, Jesus wasn't created. Like, this is not okay. We can't have Jesus created. He's God. But you're missing the long story here, right? He's the new creation. He is good. He's the one who will do what is supposed to be done. He's a new Moses. He's a new Adam. He's a new David. He's all of these. He's the prophet, priest, and king. You're going to find out that Adam is prophet, priest, and king. Kind of. Moses almost makes it to prophet, priest, and king, but he rejects his prophetic call, right? So Aaron has to be pulled in to be able to help him. So together they become a prophet. David almost makes it to this prophet, priest, king idea, but not quite, because he does some things that he shouldn't be doing. So anyway, all that theme is going to get there so that when we see Jesus, the new creation of God, we're supposed to be super excited. It's all been leading to that one moment. So it is whatever time it is at your house.
9:01 or 6:01, I suppose.
All right.
Isn't it like how the authors are writing in an explanation for the 7 days and the rest? Like, I think of a corollary to how the current modern church has written in, like, we use it as an explanation for the argument on evolution that we have to have now. Like, aren't they kind of doing the same sort of thing? Like, we want to use this to make the argument that we want to make, even though it's not really there.
You're going to have to say that differently.
Yeah. So, like, the point about how the author of this is writing in a justification for the day of rest that may not have been there from the beginning.
Right.
Hasn't is the modern church using Genesis story to justify evolution, that same sort of a thing?
I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Not in the original story, but we want to use it to have that argument.
Yeah, I think they are probably doing that. The question is that a legitimate way to do things? And what I want to do is I want to follow what the original author was trying to get across. So I think, at least I hope to some degree, that the original author was taking from the original stories and moving it in a straight line, kind of, right? And then the prophets would do the same thing, and the New Testament would do the same thing, so that we can see an advancement of the idea, but still it's an advancement of the original idea. So me as a preacher, I'm going to be doing the same thing, but I'm not going to just make it say whatever I want it to say to get across something. I'm going to try and take it in the same direction. Now, there's a lot of preachers who disagree with me on that. And there's a lot of hermeneutics people who disagree and say you can pretty much make it say, like the New Testament authors are going back and they're finding they're just making stuff up from the Old Testament. I don't know that that's quite fair. I think they're seeing a theme, a big picture idea. They're not actually moving perfectly, but they see this theme and they're continuing the theme. I don't know if I answered the question, but in my head, that all made really good sense.
You end your outline with a quote from Westerman. Do I need to read it? Does it matter?
Oh, yes. Read it because it's awesome.
Oh, okay.
I think it's awesome.
Talk about creator and creation is everywhere colored by a reverent concern to guard the inaccessible mystery of creation from the human attempt to describe it. P does not want to answer our questions about sun versus light, or did God create night or primeval deep. He wants to guard the mystery of creation, not preserve it. He sees himself as one of the choir. He adds and takes, gives and receives. He is not the authoritative answer. He speaks along with others before him and after him.
Does that make sense? I just thought that was such a great quote, right? He's one of the choir. He's just adding to what people have talked about in the past. He's not trying to argue. One of the questions is how do you have light when you don't have sun, right? And we talked about that last week. Sun doesn't show up till the fourth day. No, you're missing the point, right? He's not trying to make an argument for that. He's not trying to say what's going on in the darkness and the primeval deep and all of that. Missing the larger point. Okay, and he's not trying to explain creation to you. He doesn't care about that. He's given you this cool structure because he wants you to see that the Sabbath is primary, that the sixth day, mankind, his icon, his image is placed there. Because we're going to take this day and we're going to move it into chapter 2 in a lot more specific detail, where this now becomes the most important thing, day 6, right? Not day 7 like it is in this one, because day 7 is most important because the priests are writing that in there. They're adding, although Adam is going to be a priest, you'll see in chapter 2 as well. But I just love the way what Westerman talks about all that. So 10% battery remaining. Well, that's good timing. Any last minute things that anybody wants to share?
Where are the notes that everybody's referring to? I missed last week. Are there notes somewhere?
Yeah.
They're on Facebook on the page titled Tuesday School. If you
Okay.
It's got a photo of a Bible and a notepad.
All right. I'll make sure I look at those next time because I was a little lost, but that's okay.
If you just be sure to like Tuesday School, then the Tuesday School stuff should show up in your news feed. At
Okay.
least it did in mine.
All righty. Thank you.
Raise your hand on this. Okay.
Just
Good.
talk.
Yeah, you can just talk.
Hey, Chase,
Yes, Kyle.
where are you?
As in what
I'm-
country?
Earth.
State?
He's on
Country,
Earth.
state, city, room, building, edifice? Like, I'm just trying to figure out.
I am in a church building in California.
Oh,
California?
Wow, that was way off.
I was way off.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, good guess.
Why the heck are you in California? Wait, I'm Rob Dalrymple.
Can you wear a striped shirt next time? We can say, "Where's Waldo?"
Yes. I will wear a striped shirt next time. Sorry for this blue.
I miss you, Jen.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's nice having all of my worlds kind of collide. This is kind of neat.
That's a theme too.
It's a good thing, huh?
Worlds colliding.
It is. That's the whole point of Genesis, right? These worlds are supposed to collide. And the whole Bible, right? That's what we're looking at. That's right. This and this. Yes.
And then when we end, the worlds go away.
The whole point is that the New Jerusalem is supposed to come down, right, to earth, so God can forever dwell with man. And our whole theology is, when are we going to escape and go live with God?
I thought we were going to get raptured to heaven. Oh.
Missing it, right? It's supposed to come together. Okay. Yeah, sorry. It's so exciting the way it all works, because everything, these themes, these motifs all fit together. It's almost like supernaturally someone has planned how the Bible would all come together and divinely inspired this thing that is just so very beautiful in all of its messiness. It's just amazing.
It's almost like someone did that on purpose.
Almost like that.
Almost.
Yeah, hopefully you got the sarcasm and the wink in there. Yeah. All right. Nice to see y'all.
Thank you,
Good
Jace.
seeing you.
Everybody.
Thank you, Jace.
Next
Peace
week,
out.
we're going to talk about the priest, and you guys, it's going to be awesome. Adam.
Thank you,